Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, O Captain, my Captain. For those of you who are unaware, the inspiration of this motion with the novel of an info slide is actually from the movie or book called The Dead Poets Society, of which they recite that phrase, and the Dead Poets Society collectively refers to the class that Mr. Keating had taught. The group of people, which include Todd Anderson and Neil Perry, may he rest in peace because he died, and this class was led by the legendary Mr. Keating. Mr. Keating in the movie was played by Robin Williams, RIP as well. And what this debate really is about is the moral dilemma that Anderson is facing towards the end, or in this debate. Like, I'm not going to limit it to like the book or the movie, like in this context, he's facing a dilemma in terms of self-preservation or trying to be able to save someone important to him. That is to say, this debate is an actor motion with an embedded policy of having to be able to sign the report and be able to like frame or put Mr. Keating in a position of disadvantage, of which we need to understand a couple of very important things. The first thing is that Todd Anderson is under an intense amount of pressure and is facing a lot of cognitive dissonance. His friend just died. He's facing a lot of pressure and uncertainty about his own future. And given like where this debate is kind of set, there's a lot of limited access to information given that this happens in the 50s, right? So there's some sort of like time place set in terms of this happening. But we think that ultimately he faces a lot of pressure as a man versus man conflict, also from his parents demanding him to be successful when they pay a lot of money to send them to this school. So the dilemma he faces is like, does he sign this and secure his own future and or not put him in so much risk because there might be more investigation, or he might like get kicked out, which will set him back and even cripple his chance of being able to go to uni and get a better life? Or does he like not sign it and maybe principally defend Mr. Keating and stay true to the collective nature of the Dead Poet Society, which really represents a lot of liberal arts and critical thinking and marching to the beat of your own drum? We think the point in which he has to make this decision is barred and riddled by so much uncertainty, which include but is not limited to, number one, you don't know what the school and headmaster and parent teachers association of the Welton Academy want. They want a fall guy because a student just died, meaning it's possible that they're pinning this blame on Mr. Keating, who is the authority and adult who is likely possibly influencing most recently what happened to Neil Perry when he took his own life. That's the attributable cause. But of course, it's probably not Keating's fault. Perry and Anderson love and respect Keating, but in terms of how this took a dark turn because Perry killed himself, it's entirely possible that he killed himself for a multitude of reasons. And I don't think this debate's about why Perry killed himself or whether or not Keating is to blame, but uniquely about what Anderson has to do in this particular context, whether he has to do that. And we think that ultimately, he needs to be able to preserve himself and truly be able to protect himself because his own interest, especially given how it's characterized, how he thinks, how the society is like at that time, even if he's been influenced to be like selfless and perpetuate different kinds of values. The second uncertainty is, bro, he doesn't know at that point what other students might do. Meaning, even if he does sign it to be the moral guy or the good guy, it might not have any net change because Keating could potentially get cooked either way if majority of students do wreck him with that regard, or even if they don't, and this is the best case, right? Like all the students go, oh, captain, my captain, and be consistent and try to save him. They might try to wreck him in potentially other ways, right? Like accuse him of certain things, maybe even fabricate or plant evidence, because we also have to be empathetic to the institution of the academy and the school and the parent-teachers association. A student offed himself Of course, in that society, the norms of the patriarchy and conservatism, like being able to do what you have to do, not go into like acting and all these things that Perry did, is largely the standard of being able to follow your particular parent. Meaning both Anderson and Perry were under immense amounts of pressure, and what we are motivated by on side opening government is we don't want to put Anderson in an emotionally vulnerable state that he might necessarily regret, because he might pull off a Perry, God forbid, in the worst case, and do some amount of self-harm at the point in which he thinks he wants to save Keating, or that's at least what he might be conditioned to do, because that might be easy. But the harder decision is to be selfish. The harder decision is to be able to protect yourself and truly march to the beat of your own drum. That is actually principally consistent with what Keating's actually telling and taught you to do. Ladies and gentlemen, in this life, we all make decisions. We regret some things. We regret shitty arguments we've made in the prelims. Maybe like my partner, you regret making me Iron Man certain rounds this tournament. And just in that situation, that individual, Anderson, might regret it. But that is part of life. And that's something part of what Keating's really trying to be able to say. And here's the additional kicker. If Keating is as mature, as responsible as he is, then he wouldn't necessarily blame Perry or he wouldn't blame Anderson, because his job in their education journey is done, ladies and gentlemen. He affected them already. He's taught them to be a liberal arts critical thinker, and now it's their court to march to the beat of their own drum to make these decisions. And we think a huge part about maturity is thinking about yourself in terms of the long term of what might happen, and not the short term for other things you care about but are not proximate to you. Will it hurt if he signs that? Will he cry? Will he be affected? Definitely. He cares about Keating. He cares about the society. He cares about these people. But in order to be mature and care about himself, he has to sign it. Oh, Captain, my Captain, we are very proud to stand on side proposition and open this debate.